On the surface, a harmless little fox, but underneath, a ferocious nine-tailed fox. Under a woman's meticulous care, it surprisingly developed a love for sweet potatoes. A creature of divine origin, abandoned in the human realm to suffer hardship, it naturally trusted no one. Only Celia treated it well, not only providing 10 meals a day, but also acting as its personal groomer. Just a few days ago, a wave of yokai smuggling swept across the land. Celia launched a large-scale search operation, just as she prepared to execute the prize in her grasp. A mysterious old man appeared beside her. He led Celia to the Eastern goddess. The goddess immediately stepped forward to examine the cage, discovering a nine-tailed fox trapped inside. Typically, a 900-year-old fox should be in its adult form. After some explanation, Celia learned that this was a spirit creature born of a 1,000-year celestial fox. The woman prepared to release it, but feared it might attack the townspeople. Coupled with the goddess's plea, Celia had no choice but to temporarily adopt the gentle, yet pitiful, nine-tailed creature. Good and evil hung precariously in the balance. Her decision would influence its future path. With a sigh, she carried the frail, barely breathing fox back home. The next day, after training, Celia was still agonizing over whether holy water or herbs would be the quicker cure. Her thoughts were interrupted by her deputy commander. The man stammered, searching for a topic, with Celia holding the key to his request. He quickly excused himself after a few words. Returning to her quarters, Celia found the nine-tailed fox in worse condition than the day before. She began to worry about who to turn to for help. Finally, Celia decided to seek out the regiment's healer, Shura, but was immediately refused. Shura declared she would never heal a yokai, and even threatened to throw the little fox out. After Celia's earnest pleas, Shura quickly grasped the principle of beauty equating to justice. She reluctantly approached the nine-tailed fox. With just a simple examination, Shura was momentarily mesmerized. Fortunately, the woman quickly snapped out of it. Shura grumbled and complained to Celia. The little fox, suddenly interested, let out a strange cry, as if wanting to join their conversation. Shura took this as an attempt to argue. Perhaps sensing a shared plight, Celia grew silent. Seeing the usually imposing knight commander so subdued, Shura found herself in a dilemma. Deciding to repay Celia for saving her life, she opened the cage and took the nine-tailed fox in her hands for a closer look. The little creature grew agitated, but soon, under Shura's gentle care, the restless fox finally lay down, exhausted. As she left, Shura couldn't help but remark on the commander's naivete in agreeing to adopt such a rare and powerful nine-tailed fox. Celia didn't disagree. She would rather be hurt herself than see the citizens of her kingdom harmed. After Shura left, the woman looked at the weakly breathing fox, as if seeing her own difficult childhood. She reached out to touch it. Both felt each other's warmth. Celia whispered, promising to let it go when it was older, urging the little fox to cultivate its spirit and find some beautiful foxes of its own. And there was a reason for Celia's overflowing maternal affection. Before the anticipation of her birth could be fully realized, she had been abandoned by her family on the outskirts of town. Fortunately, a kind priestess brought her back to the orphanage. It was a dilapidated and miserable place. Though they occasionally went hungry, life was relatively harmonious. But one day, something unexpected happened to Celia. With the appearance of a curse on her arm, Celia was branded a monster. Everyone watched the priestess's reaction to the holy water she dripped onto Celia's arm. They all decided they had to find a way to get rid of her. But any child who tormented Celia would inevitably suffer misfortune. In the end, they could do nothing but let the matter drop. From that day forward, Celia could no longer fit into the world of the other children. Perhaps she thought her family had abandoned her because of the curse. Suddenly, a soccer ball flew towards her. A few little brats began to insult her. Celia, hardened by her victories over adversity, wanted to fight back. But remembering the priestess's warning, Celia, with nowhere else to go, gave up the struggle. Their icy words stung her heart. Now, Celia had transformed, but the curse continued to grow, as wild as ever. To survive, and to get closer to the truth, she relied on the victory Shura had granted her, becoming a holy knight. After a night of pain, Celia woke early the next day. The nine-tailed fox's injuries had begun to heal. Celia marveled at the little creature's resilience. Hearing this, the nine-tailed fox yipped and grumbled. Celia brought a bowl of fresh water. This immediately piqued the fox's interest. It sniffed at the water cautiously, as if afraid Celia had poisoned it. After much deliberation, it still refused to take a single sip. It seemed Shura was right. This little creature was difficult. Celia held out her hand, showing she meant no harm. Then, she scooped up the little fox. After struggling for a few minutes, the fox seemed to resign itself to its fate. It looked at Celia haughtily. Suddenly spotting the open window behind Celia, the little fox darted forward. This unexpected move startled Celia. She turned and followed swiftly. At the last possible moment, Celia caught the nine-tailed fox as it attempted to escape. But by now, the fox had lost all reason. It sank its teeth into Celia's arm. Celia didn't struggle. She continued to patiently try and tame the little fox. But the nine-tailed fox was a demon at its core. It extended its claws, raking them across Celia's skin. A scratch appeared on Celia's delicate cheek, but under Celia's constant soothing touch, the little fox gradually calmed down. As punishment, Celia put it back in its cage. She told the nine-tailed fox that as long as it didn't try to escape, it would have another chance to come out tomorrow. Then, she placed the water dish inside, but the nine-tailed fox seemed unmoved. It turned its head and pretended to sleep. Looking at the stubborn little creature, Celia's thoughts were troubled. Silently, she left the room. Only after Celia was completely gone did the little fox slowly open its eyes. It stared at the tempting water, torn between two choices. In the end, reason triumphed over desire. Night fell, and Celia finished her day's work. She was still troubled, wondering how to properly care for a nine-tailed fox. But no matter what, she was determined to succeed today. Learning from past experience, Celia no longer dared to place her hand on its head. Perhaps the memory of past abuse would only fuel the malice in its heart. She suddenly asked the knight behind her if they had any experience taming wild beasts or pet dogs. The man immediately replied, saying he had once trained a large golden retriever, a creature particularly fond of cuddling. It wouldn't do to let the nine-tailed fox go hunting, he added, explaining that dogs enjoy walks and sweet potatoes. This dietary suggestion surprised Celia. Would the fox really enjoy sweet potatoes? When asked about the scratches on her face, Celia, proud and aloof, immediately denied they were from the fox. Shura, the knight commander, chuckled. Back at her home, Celia went straight to the nine-tailed fox's room. As expected, the fox hadn't eaten anything. Holding several sweet potatoes, she hesitated. She hoped this time she would succeed. It was a silent battle of wills between them. Who would be the more stubborn? Currently, it seemed the little fox was winning. He showed no interest in the sweet potatoes. Could he be so unintelligent that he didn't realize they were food? Perhaps he thought they were toys, or perhaps he wanted to be hand-fed. With this foolish thought, Celia coaxed the little fox to eat the sweet potato from her hand. He swatted it away, shattering it. He was surprisingly strong. He seemed to have plenty of energy, even without eating. Celia began to clean up the mess. The stubborn little fox struck out again, inflicting a second scratch on Celia. Just like the stray kitten we took in, she thought, clutching the wound. Years on a battlefield had inured her to such minor injuries. She quickly bandaged herself. The little fox in her arms was trapped in a painful memory. The repeated abuse, the merciless whippings, the endless torment had shattered his trust in humans. But slowly, he sensed that this woman was different. She even reminded him a little of his mother. Perhaps in a lingering terror, the little fox's body felt cold. Celia didn't blame him. She knew the root of his fear was the pain inflicted by humans. A tear traced a path down the little fox's face, wise beyond his years. He accepted her embrace, relaxing into her warmth. He stayed there, nestled against her, until late into the night. This precious feeling of connection was a solace to them both. Celia refilled a bowl with fresh water. Seeing the wound on her neck, the little fox finally let down his guard and lapped tentatively at the water. It was the most peaceful he had felt in months. After quenching his thirst, he reverted to his usual aloofness, though perhaps only 40% as reserved as before. Days passed. Every day, Celia brought different foods. Determined to improve the condition of his fur, she resolved to bring some much-needed raw meat on her next return. Today, the little fox was unusually quiet. Sensing something amiss, Celia rushed over to him. She found him lying on his side, trembling slightly. It turned out he had understood her words all along. Her words that day had resonated deeply within him. He lamented his fate. If only he weren't a nine-tailed fox. In his dreams, his mother appeared before him, a celestial fox of breathtaking beauty. Her very existence had invited tragedy. A mysterious figure had brutally murdered her, leaving him to the clutches of a collector, where he suffered endless abuse. With the last of his strength, he had broken free of his shackles and fled. He ran and ran, until Celia's figure appeared before him. It had just been a nightmare. His strange behavior before had simply been a manifestation of his pain. Fortunately, Celia finished her work early today. Returning home, she intended to spend some quality time bonding with the nine-tailed fox. Bathed in sunlight, Celia drew the small fox close, holding him in her arms. A familiar feeling washed over him, a comforting warmth reminiscent of his mother. He reveled in the sense of security Celia offered, basking in the afternoon sun. The scene shifted to the kitchen, where Celia began preparing sweet potatoes. Having learned from her previous culinary mishaps, Celia felt confident that this time success was within her grasp. Observing the nine-tailed fox, who seemed to grow more docile with each passing day, she decided it was time to give him a name. She chose the single syllable, Lon, the name of her own soul. It was a name long buried within her heart, a name her mother had foreseen long ago. Her mother had told her that if she ever met someone who could call out her soul's name, she mustn't let them go. It was a sentiment that had always seemed absurd. Yet, here it was happening. A blush crept across the little fox's face. He told himself it was just a coincidence. A sudden wave of pride washed over him. He had initially perceived Celia as just an ordinary holy knight, but now he felt an inexplicable connection. Celia quickly placed a piece of sweet potato into Lan's mouth. Unconcerned with his sharp teeth, Lan savored the uniquely human delicacy. Dopamine flooded his system. He felt an overwhelming sense of joy and quickly devoured the sweet potato. Celia hadn't expected this creature, with his golden eyes and 9 fluffy tails, to have such a charming side. Unable to resist, she scooped him up and showered him with gentle affection. Lon was utterly mortified. Not even his own mother had ever been so affectionate. His little heart pounded in his chest. It seemed even the most fearsome creatures had a soft side. A few days later, Shura, the Knight Commander, noticed the increasing number of scratches on Celia's face. He began to worry about what kind of ferocious beast she was keeping at home. He insisted that she seek treatment, suggesting she at least get a rabies shot. Before Celia could protest, the other knights seized her. They were determined to take her to Shura, the healing priestess, that very day. Arriving at Shura's residence, Celia was met with a barrage of scolding. Shura had warned her that the nine-tailed fox was trouble. Despite her reservations, Shura examined Celia thoroughly. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries. In response to Shura's accusations, Celia simply gave her a look. Shura was easily defeated. What a sweet girl, she thought. As it happened, Lon was currently learning etiquette at the stable. Celia invited Shura to observe his progress. Shura, skeptical, couldn't believe that such a fearsome creature could truly be tamed by Celia. After bidding Shura farewell, Celia visited the pet supply store in town. It was the shopkeeper's first time seeing a holy knight in her store, and she was understandably puzzled. She asked if the Knight Commander had perhaps entered the wrong shop. Celia assured her she hadn't. She explained that she was looking for pet shampoo. After carefully browsing the selection, Celia purchased a variety of pet supplies and toys. Returning home, she began searching for Lon. Ever since she had allowed him to roam freely, he had developed a habit of appearing in the most unexpected places. The moment she opened the bedroom door, she found Lon lounging comfortably on her mattress. He appeared to have injured his paw. Celia immediately realized what had happened. Lon must have stumbled into the protective barrier she had set up, resulting in a burn. Thankfully, the injury seemed to be superficial, affecting only his fur. The little fox's temper flared, and he was already so fierce. Why did this woman still wear such a gentle expression? Ever since she had called him Lon, every time he saw her, a wave of irritation washed over him. But his heart would also pound faster. It was truly infuriating. Forget it, better not let her get hurt. After all, he still wanted to eat those fresh sweet potatoes. Night fell. Celia had just given Lon a present, and now she stood there with a triumphant air. It seemed she'd need to buy a more durable toy next time. But the main event tonight wasn't the toy. It was a rather expensive bottle of bath wash. She glanced at the bathtub beside her. "Time for your bath," she said. The woman kept a nine-tailed fox as a pet. Since then, it had been one mishap after another. Fortunately, the nine-tailed fox's temperament gradually softened, and he even became protective of her. Celia was able to escape unscathed from his claws. To properly reward the little fox, the woman prepared a luxurious bathing set. As a handsome fellow being scrubbed in a bathtub by a mere woman, it gave Lon a sense of unprecedented humiliation. The foam on his body hadn't even been rinsed off when Lon bolted from the tub at 180 miles an hour. He thought he'd made a lucky escape, but he hadn't counted on his speed. Unable to brake in time, he crashed straight into a nearby shelf. At the very last moment, Celia rushed in, shielding him with her own, smaller body. This stopped the mischievous Lon in his tracks. He looked at Celia with a whimper, but the woman didn't scold him. Instead, her first concern was for the little fox's well-being. This time, Lon didn't resist. He allowed her to lead him away and rinsed the remaining soap suds from his fur. Celia quickly dried him, but he still trembled. Perhaps he hadn't yet recovered from the near disaster. Celia wasn't faring much better. She had badly sprained her ankle. After briefly tending to her injury, she limped back with some small snacks. This filled the little fox with guilt. He had no appetite at all. Lon leaped off the sofa and ran to Celia's side. He gently licked her wound, offering a small measure of comfort. But the woman misunderstood. She sternly reprimanded the nine-tailed fox. "You must never think of eating humans," she said, "even if your vital essence is low." She stood up, intending to stew some sweet potatoes for the little fox to replenish him. Lon whined in distress, but Celia took it as a plea for food. Resigned, she brought him a worm to eat. The sheer absurdity of it left the little fox speechless. Meanwhile, a mysterious man was watching Celia's every move. He harbored a deep hatred for Celia. Learning that she now had a spirit creature by her side only fueled his resentment. Watching the woman, who had become a holy knight, in the mirror, he wished he could crawl through the glass and attack her right then and there. This murderous intent was sensed by Lon. The little fox's eyes widened, returning the sentiment. In an instant, cracks appeared in the glass. The powerful aura shattered the mirror. The man was stunned by the fox cub's demonic power. If he were to reach his sacred form, it would be troublesome indeed. He immediately decided to eliminate them both. He fantasized about one day burying Celia in a sunny spot and bringing her a lily each year. Meanwhile, Celia was researching information about nine-tailed foxes. At the age of 10, they could transform into the shape of a small child. By 20, they would achieve their sacred form. But Lon was already 19 and still in this form. Celia couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. The book also mentioned that nine-tailed foxes were stubborn by nature. They only seek one companion for life. Nine-tailed foxes are incredibly rare. Was Lon destined to live a life of solitude? Back at home, Celia began instilling in Lon the importance of finding a strong and healthy partner, someone who could stay by his side for a very, very long time. Watching Lon yawn sleepily, Celia pointed at the nine-tailed fox encyclopedia, insisting that this time he had to listen to her. Lon licked Celia's hand, fully expressing his feelings. But alas, the difference in language meant Celia couldn't understand Lan's intentions. Just then, a hurried knocking came from the door. It was Shura coming to check on Lan's physical condition and to see why he hadn't yet transformed into a human. Though Shura was extremely reluctant for the sake of the Knight Commander, he gritted his teeth and bore the indignity. Before that, Celia decided to offer Lon a plump chicken for dinner. Lon quickly devoured the meal, but his essence didn't show any particular change. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to achieve his sacred form in a year. He longed to grow quickly. Lon was drawn to the chi shi emanating from the curse on Celia. Then, an idea struck him. Perhaps he could absorb Shura's essence to enhance his own. While Celia was away, Lon quickly returned to the room. Looking at the delicious essence before him, he began to act coy. Shura's consciousness gradually blurred, his body involuntarily moving forward. He was now under Lan's charm, babbling incoherently at the fox. Just as Shura reached out to touch Lon, Celia arrived just in time, averting the crisis. Afterwards, Shura felt dizzy, unable to remember what had happened. Celia ordered Shura to leave. Closing the door, her expression turned cold. It was the first time Lon had seen her look so serious. He felt the pressure mounting. Celia spoke first. "If you ever dare to harm an innocent person again," she warned, "I will end you." Hearing this, the little fox lowered his head meekly, moving closer to Celia, seemingly accepting her reprimand. Seeing Lan's remorse, Celia quickly forgave him. From that moment on, Lan never again thought of harming a human. The next day, Celia finished her work early and returned home. This time, she brought back a feather toy. Although foxes are canines, their spirit is more akin to a cat's. After the previous scolding, Lan and Celia's bond grew stronger. Celia even added a turtle to Lan's meal. She had painstakingly caught it herself, but Lan, the little rascal, retreated to his room, not only refusing to eat it, but also giving the poor turtle a good smack, sending it flying across the room. Not only did feathers scatter everywhere, but Celia was completely baffled by Lan's capricious behavior. Such a picky eater. He even rolled his eyes at Celia, signaling her to apologize. Otherwise, he wouldn't eat a thing, not even sweet potatoes. This went on for 4 days. Finally, Celia had to seek Shura's advice. They decided to take Lan to the forest. That way, Celia knew she needed to extend the barrier further, unsure if overusing her powers would trigger a backlash from the curse on her arm. But for Lan, her nine-tailed fox's well-being, she decided to risk it. That evening, Celia performed the spell. Having completed the ritual, she approached the sleeping fox and gently woke him. Watching his usual haughty demeanor, Celia offered a sincere apology for her earlier impatience. Lan, to maintain the pretense of his displeasure, nipped playfully at Celia's hand before finally offering a satisfied smile. The two were reconciled. Once again, Lan had cast his shadow over her heart. Little did he know he was soon to be trained into a hunting fox. The wolf boy Celia had rescued was about to have a fierce encounter with her pampered, nine-tailed companion. Not long before, Celia, wanting Lan to be happy, had taken him outside. She provided a large section of the forest for him to explore and enjoy. Lan reached out to test the familiar boundary, unaware Celia had extended it considerably. Celia then presented a special treat, an enormous black bear from a foreign land. This, she thought, would surely keep Lan occupied and well-fed. Satisfied with her arrangements, Celia returned to the house. She'd barely had time for a cup of coffee when she heard Lan scratching at the door with his little paws. He seemed less inclined to play today. This continued for several days. Lan returned early each time. Celia felt a growing unease and decided to stay outside with Lan. Hoping to understand his strange behavior, Lan headed straight for the forest, but soon turned back, perhaps to check if Celia was still there. What a clingy little creature, she thought. After several days of observation, Celia realized Lan enjoyed being outside, but wasn't comfortable staying out too long. Perhaps being confined for so long had made him unaccustomed to freedom. Celia wondered why Lan's mother had seemingly abandoned him. She remembered their first encounter. Lan had been completely untouchable. Even touching his neck had provoked a violent reaction. He still hadn't shifted into human form. Could these experiences be connected? Just then, Lan strutted back from the forest, a strange object dangling from his mouth. He'd brought her a gift. Celia felt a surge of warmth. His hunting skills were certainly developing. She hoped they could continue to live together in harmony. The next day, Celia endured the pain of the curse in the privacy of her home. Perhaps due to the extended barrier, the pain was more intense than usual. Lost in a haze of pain, she hallucinated. The faces of those who had called her a monster appeared before her. A sudden, urgent knocking startled her. Composing herself, Celia feigned composure. It was the vice captain with a report. A large number of demonic creatures had appeared in the northwestern mountains. The guard station there had been completely overwhelmed. The curse flaring and the news of the monsters left Celia reeling. But as captain, she knew her duty. She prepared to depart for the ominous mountains. Meanwhile, within the temple of Saint Bokaya, the barrier faltered. The Sora artifact, protector of the land, was losing its power. The priests struggled to maintain the barrier, but its collapse seemed imminent. Someone suggested contacting the saint, but the elder refused. He believed that the incarnation of the goddess Solara was a supreme being and should not be questioned by mortals. But now, with the world in chaos, Celia, of the Holy Knight Order of the Psalm reported that only the clergy could currently combat the large-scale demonic incursions. Meanwhile, within the clergy, a certain tension brewed. The saint was fiercely reprimanding a man who had dared to question him. He declared that Urios would pay the price for his insolence. The saint, who had seemingly caused the barrier's current instability, shifted the blame onto the guardian, accusing him of lacking reverence and failing to report the problem immediately. Instead, the guardian had chosen to confront the Pope first. As a result, Urios was placed under a month-long confinement by the saint. However, his subordinates universally ignored the saint's decree. Even the Pope pleaded for Urios' release. Only when the saint feigned a dream did they reluctantly release Urios. This only strengthened Urios' resolve to expose the impostor, despite the saint bearing the holy mark. He was certain this man was not the true saint. Meanwhile, the Pope, too, began to suspect something was amiss. He secretly ordered Aranto to contact the other guardians. They had to find the true saint, no matter the cost. As pillars of the world, they bore the responsibility to protect it. Elsewhere, Celia, having eradicated most of the demonic creatures, found herself troubled by a rescued boy. The knights had witnessed him shape-shifting from a monstrous form, yet they couldn't bring themselves to harm the crying child. Celia approached him, blade in hand, her expression unwavering. With a swift stroke, she struck him down, black blood splattering across her beautiful face. Unbeknownst to her, a sinister energy from the ground beneath her feet began to seep into her body. That night, Celia returned home to find Lon lounging leisurely on a blanket. Despite her efforts to open the door quietly, the nine-tailed fox awoke. Celia seized the opportunity to lavish him with affection. Lon seemed to revel in her touch. This was clearly different from the descriptions of nine-tailed foxes in books. This foolish little fox seemed more like a playful puppy than a creature intent on absorbing her essence. Suddenly, as if sensing something, Lon bolted, fleeing a distance of 800 meters. Celia, bewildered, cautiously approached him again. At that moment, the curse within her flared. Fighting back the pain, she decided to fetch some of Lan's favorite treats from the kitchen. Lon quickly returned, drawn by the promise of food. Today's snack was roasted turkey. As Lon ate with gusto, Celia voiced a lingering question. Why haven't you taken human form yet? You're already 19 years old. Lan's expression darkened at her words. Seeing this, Celia quickly reassured him that she was only concerned for his well-being. The next day, a guardian visited Celia, much to her surprise. Guardians rarely left the saint's side. Murtis, however, had arrived on a secret mission. He gave her a phoenix feather and instructed her to scout outside the camp, searching for any trace of the saint. She wasn't to question her task. She simply needed to find someone with a burn scar on their shoulder. Anyone who could withstand the burn of Phoenix was a likely candidate. Having delivered his instructions, the guardian quickly departed. Celia, too, left the camp, heading out to deal with matters concerning werewolves. Celia and her knight companion discovered a pack of wolves attacking in the undergrowth, but the wolves weren't targeting them. Their prey was a small wolf cub. Celia drew her holy sword and leaped into action. With a few swift moves, she dispatched the wolves. Celia landed gracefully, a picture of victorious ease. The wolf cub huddled in the embrace of its fallen family, radiating no trace of malice. Then, in a blink, the cub shifted, transforming into a young boy. He begged Celia to take him with her. The knight at Celia's side moved to strike the boy down, but Celia stopped him. She believed everyone deserved a chance, a turning point. She wanted to guide the wolf boy toward a better path. The boy, now named Vio, circled Celia, his pleas echoing around them. He implored her to take him in, explaining that his mother had been executed by their pack for believing in the kindness of humans. He promised to repay her kindness if she would only offer him sanctuary. Celia gently suggested that Vio put on some clothes first so she could more easily bring him home. The knight reminded Celia that the Holy Kingdom had only ever raised exceptional and rare creatures, like dragons. They had no precedent for raising werewolves. Undeterred, Celia continued to make arrangements, realizing that this would also reveal to her knight that she was already harboring a nine-tailed fox. She wondered how shattered his worldview would be when they returned home. Lon, the nine-tailed fox, sensed something amiss the moment they arrived. He rose to his feet, tense and alert. He glared at the wolf boy beside Celia, bristling with hostility. How dare this creature share the same space as him? He lunged at Vio, ready to attack. At the last moment, Lon shifted into his human form. He saved Celia from the brunt of Vio's instinctive, fear-driven attack. It was the first time he had revealed his true yokai power in the human world. Not long before, Celia had brought Vio home. Without a word, Lon seized Vio, clamping down on a vital pressure point and biting him. Celia quickly intervened, explaining Vio's plight to Lon. They were both kindred spirits, she reasoned. They shouldn't make things difficult for each other. Werewolves had a reputation for being aggressive, but Vio, she explained, was simply struggling to control his instincts. Celia knelt down and patiently spoke to Vio, deciding to create a training regimen for him. With proper guidance, he could learn to control his powers and become a fine werewolf. After some questioning, Celia learned that Vio was 4 years old and still in his developmental stage. Werewolves achieved their sacred form at the age of 5, gaining significant power. Vio promised to use his newfound strength to protect Celia. And so, 19-year-old Lon became Vio's reluctant older brother figure. The next morning, Celia was startled awake by a rather unusual method employed by the two. This, she mused, was the consequence of owning pets and leaving the door open. Her mind raced. She couldn't quite pinpoint the series of events that had led her to this point in her life. But overall, she decided it wasn't so bad. Little Vio had adapted well to living with the three of them. However, the affectionate child seemed reluctant to wear clothes. This was a source of constant exasperation for Celia. She instructed Lon to keep a close eye on the silly child. Lon readily agreed. Just then, Celia sensed someone entering her barrier. Immediately on guard, she ordered Lon to take Vio into the forest. She relaxed slightly when she realized it was Urios, one of the guardians. But when Urios requested a private conversation, Celia found herself facing a new dilemma. Celia prayed silently that Lon and Vio wouldn't come out. Perhaps due to Murphy's Law, the two attention seekers were currently vibrating on the same frequency by the window. This made Celia both exasperated and amused. The guardian asked Celia if there was something unusual behind her, wondering why she had such a strange expression. Celia quickly changed the subject, reporting on her work to the woman. The investigation started with the orphans. If someone possesses the victory power but isn't using it for the Holy Kingdom, their situation must be problematic. Or perhaps they simply don't know they possess it. The guardian, Murtis, didn't comment, but mentioned the annual work presentations given by the Holy Knights, implying that Celia had 9 months before she had to travel to the victory capital. By then, Murtis would provide Celia with a secret residence where she could continue her mission to find the wielder of the victory power. Having said this, the guardian stood up to pour a glass of water, but suddenly felt dizzy. Celia immediately rushed to help her, and they both unexpectedly fell to the floor. The scene Celia had most dreaded had come to pass. Lon, her tail swishing agitatedly, had already appeared before the guardian, determined to protect her master. The guardian gestured for Celia to get up first, but the protective nine-tailed fox wasn't having any of it. Lon lunged forward and bit the guardian's arm, refusing to let go. After the commotion ended, the guardian sat calmly on the sofa and asked Celia why she was keeping a nine-tailed fox, a demon, as a companion. Celia recounted the whole story to the guardian, hoping for understanding. Murtis was astonished. The woman before her could actually sense the spirit blood within the nine-tailed fox. This wasn't an ability possessed by ordinary holy knights. Considering that neither the nine-tailed fox nor the werewolf had consumed human vital energy, the guardian decided to keep their secret. But, she said, "You must remember to complete the mission I assigned you." Afterward, Celia worked even harder to repay the organization's kindness. However, her health deteriorated day by day. Even with a healer accompanying her in battle, she couldn't escape the pain brought on by the curse. Seeing that the demons were almost eradicated, Shura suggested Celia leave first. She would stay behind and finish up with the rest of their unit. Finally, Celia agreed to the request, bidding farewell to Shura, the healer. She mounted her warhorse and rode back alone to recover. With the worsening weather and the influence of the curse, Celia's hallucinations intensified. Those terrifying memories resurfaced in her mind. People taking holy water, extracting it from her mark. Excruciating phantom pain, amplified by flashes of lightning. Celia finally collapsed to the ground. Her emotions were magnified 1,000-fold. Her heart stopped. In that instant, Celia struggled to crawl forward. Despite the injustice of her fate, she still didn't give up, because now she had Vio and Lon in her life. Inside the barrier, the two cried out, unwilling to watch Celia die before their eyes. Celia gradually lost consciousness. How she wished in that moment that she had never been cursed, that she could have lived an ordinary life. She looked towards her brother. His body underwent a subtle transformation. His fur turned into flowing long hair. His paws became human limbs. He passed through the barrier and came to Celia's side. Sensing a powerful magic, Celia slowly raised her head, unaware that it was Lon in human form. The man told her to rest and not to speak. He held her and carried her back inside the barrier. The little wolf boy, Vio, couldn't believe his eyes. He shyly asked the man, Lon, if he was Vio's older brother. After receiving confirmation from Lon, the fox carefully placed Celia onto the bed. He ordered Vio to fetch a dry towel while he stayed behind to observe Celia's condition. Just as he suspected, while examining Celia's arm, he discovered the source of her constant pain. As he touched the mark, Celia, in a weak voice, pleaded with Lon not to let the curse consume him. Lon was taken aback. The crimson mark was rapidly spreading across Celia's skin. Despite Celia's efforts to stay conscious and fight it, it was no use. If this continued, Celia would surely be in grave danger. After a moment of deliberation, the nine-tailed fox bestowed upon her a spiritual pearl he had cultivated within himself. As soon as Lon took human form, unrest stirred in the world. As a holy knight, Lon felt compelled to investigate the disturbance in disguise, determined to find the true saint. Celia was just beginning to stir from her sleep. She struggled to recall the events of the previous night, only fragmented memories surfacing. Lon cautioned her against moving too much, suggesting she eat some breakfast to regain her strength. He presented her with 2 smoked ham and cheese sandwiches prepared by Shura. Celia felt a strange sense of unease. Lon, in his human form, was strikingly handsome. She had expected him to resemble a child. Perhaps from staring too long, a blush crept across Celia's cheeks. She asked Lon why he had suddenly taken this form. Lon explained that he was actually quite young for a nine-tailed fox, and that their alluring appearance often masked their true age. Celia quickly corrected him, insisting that in her eyes, he would always be her adorable little fox. Meanwhile, Vio, having stayed by Celia's side all night, was now replenishing his energy. Celia, however, had no appetite. Her stomach churned uncomfortably. She tried to suppress the pain. Lon stepped forward and gently stroked her abdomen, explaining that it was a side effect of his fox pearl. The pearl, he said, had grown alongside him since birth, absorbing his essence and spiritual energy. It was an incredibly precious thing. Celia urged him to take it back. You'll die without it. You need to keep it. But the discomfort in her stomach was intense. The nausea persisted even as she tried to work, threatening to rise into full-blown vomiting. Shura, ever perceptive, was stunned. Could you be pregnant, Holy Knight Celia? She blurted out, causing Murtis, the vice captain, to nearly choke. Shura immediately moved to check Celia's pulse, but Celia refused. This only strengthened Shura's suspicion. She erupted into a tirade, accusing Lon of taking advantage of Celia. Celia quickly clamped a hand over Shura's mouth to silence her, shooting a warning glance at Murtis. Murtis, reeling from the revelation, could barely contain his amusement. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information, he practically fled the room in a daze. Celia was utterly speechless. Lowering her head, she silently prayed that Murtis wouldn't spread the news. Shura, seemingly unfazed, began to comfort Celia with nonsensical pronouncements about the blessings of pregnancy and soul's desire for prosperity. Upon learning that Celia had simply eaten something that disagreed with her, Shura finally relaxed, following Celia, and peppering her with questions about Lan's human form. Celia insisted that Lon hadn't changed at all, that he was still as adorable as ever. Despite this, Shura advised that they should separate once Lon reached adulthood. After all, she reasoned, a nine-tailed fox belonged in the eastern continent, his homeland. Although it was difficult to accept right now, If things continued this way, a nine-tailed fox remaining in the western continent could become dangerous. Celia's thoughts raced at these words. She didn't know what reason she could use to argue with Shura. Seeing the woman's disappointment, Shura casually prepared to leave. In passing, she reminded Celia to come for a full checkup. On the way back, Celia was expressionless. She didn't know if her current course of action was right or wrong. Lon, confined to the house, might truly need boundless freedom. But how could she bring herself to speak of separation? Just as Celia was at a loss, her foot stumbled upon a wooden crate. Opening it, she discovered it was sent by the Guardian. Inside were 2 collars. This made Celia feel very conflicted, but she couldn't defy the orders of her superiors. Looking at the 2 dirty little ones before her, Celia's worries vanished. She picked up Lon and carefully observed the nine-tailed fox's condition after losing his spirit pearl. Then, she affectionately kissed both of them and took them to the bathroom for a thorough cleaning. Even if separation was inevitable in the future, it wouldn't diminish Celia's love for them in the slightest. She had simply wanted to invite the knight to bathe with her, but was caught red-handed by a certain nine-tailed fox, nearly costing her life. It turned out that not long ago, Murtis had returned to the Holy City. The first thing he did was visit a fellow guardian, a young woman. He seriously inquired if she had ever encountered a holy knight who could sense a spirit witch. The woman responded with a scornful expression. She believed that only guardians like herself, bestowed with special powers by Sora, possessed such an ability. For ordinary holy knights, it was simply too much to ask. She quickly realized the reason for Murtis's visit. Could it be that he was about to tell her such a person existed? As she suspected, Murtis recounted everything that had happened at Celia's home. This alarmed the woman, whose name was Liebone. She quickly asked Murtis if he had noticed any marks or anything on Celia's shoulders. Murtis wasn't certain about this, but the secret mission to find the victor had also been assigned to this woman. When he had given her the phoenix feather, she hadn't said much. If she had a mark, there would be no need to hide it. At these words, Liebone couldn't wait to take her leave of Murtis and head towards Celia's location. Unbeknownst to her, the saint happened to be in the corridor at that very moment. The two were immediately caught in an awkward situation. Liebone hastily greeted the saint. The man couldn't help but feel puzzled. Meetings between guardians were forbidden, yet these two dared to make such a commotion in the hallway. Could it be they had no respect for him, the saint? At that moment, the arrogant Liebone beside Murtis took all the blame. This greatly displeased the saint. He grabbed his staff and lashed out at her face, completely devoid of the composure expected of a saint. He then revealed a vicious sneer and unleashed a torrent of insults at the pair. For Liebone, a shield guardian, this level of punishment was nothing more than a light tap. This gave him a wicked idea. To punish the arrogant woman, he ordered Liebone to join the holy knights on the battlefield. Furthermore, he wouldn't issue them any armor, forcing Liebone to bear the brunt of the enemy's attacks. This was undoubtedly a suicide mission, yet Liebone still resolutely accepted. At this moment, the saint's twisted heart felt immense satisfaction. But then he remembered the one who was currently on the run, and the guardian, Uric S., suspicious of his own identity, swore to capture him and slowly torture him. Meanwhile, Celia was leisurely enjoying the afternoon sun, completely unaware. That danger was quietly approaching. The nine-tailed fox, Lon, looked up at the sky, letting out a cry to alert the others to be on guard. Celia ordered Lon and the little wolf boy, Vio, to stay put, while she went to investigate the forest alone. Parting the foliage, she found the newcomer was the guardian, Liebone. Celia hastily welcomed the guardian. She couldn't understand why all these important figures from the holy city were coming to her. Then, the girl suddenly began to act coquettishly, claiming she needed an escort for her recuperation, and requesting Celia to protect her. Celia calmly refused, stating she couldn't leave her territory. Liebone persisted, inviting Celia to join her in the hot springs. Celia clearly wasn't swayed. She couldn't leave Murtis, the vice captain, to deal with everything alone, while she went off to enjoy a vacation. It went against the very mission Shura had entrusted her with as a holy knight. At her words, the guardian's face darkened. Despite this, Celia stood firm. She only wanted to complete the mission Murtis had given her. And with that, she offered the guardian some refreshments. Seeing that Celia wouldn't budge, Libone said she would leave the next day, requesting to stay the night. This put Celia in a difficult position. Libone then revealed she already knew about the werewolf and the nine-tailed fox, assuring Celia there was no need to worry about it. She also expressed a desire to see the nine-tailed fox, adding, "I'm sure she's as lovely as you are." Looking at the seemingly innocent girl, Celia led her to the courtyard. Libone was surprised. The nine-tailed fox before her, though possessing 900 years of cultivation, looked to be only about 20 years old. Truly gifted, she thought. Even I have to close my eyes and concentrate to sense a soul like that. Could this woman be even more diligent than a guardian? Night soon fell. To accommodate the guardian's request for a bath, Celia personally escorted her to the bathroom. Libone seized the opportunity, asking Celia if they could bathe together. Before Celia could refuse, the girl pulled her along. She couldn't wait to undress Celia, to confirm her suspicions. Just as she was about to force herself on Celia, a large hand grabbed her from behind and lifted her up. It was Lon, in human form. "You suspicious character. What are you trying to do to Celia?" Just as she was about to expose Celia's identity, the guardian was lifted into the air by the murderous nine-tailed fox. Lon demanded she answer for her true purpose. But this aggressive behavior was quickly stopped by Celia. Lon, like an obedient kitten, released the guardian and transformed back in her fox form, curling up in Celia's arms. Celia gently scolded her. "You mustn't be so rude to our guests." She then ordered Lon to take Vio back to the bedroom. The guardian was left standing there awkwardly alone. Celia apologized profusely to the girl, explaining that she wasn't comfortable bathing with others. "If there's nothing else, I'll retire to my room now." Hearing this, the girl decided not to push the matter further. She would make the best of the situation. The guardian lay alone in the steaming bath, lazily enjoying the warmth while fantasizing about how to get Celia to undress without it seeming strange. It seemed things were far more challenging than she had anticipated. Over the past few days, the guardian had tried various methods. First, in the dead of night, Libone stealthily crept into Celia's bedroom. While the woman was deep in slumber, Libone slipped into the room, determined to lift Celia's clothes and investigate. Just as her plan was about to succeed, the nine-tailed fox, Lan's paw rested on Celia's restless hand. Immediately, Lon issued a warning to the guardian. The next day, the persistent Libone, still undeterred, waited patiently outside Celia's door. Utilizing the guardian's uniquely keen hearing, she caught Celia off guard while she was changing. However, Lon swiftly conjured a fox illusion, leaping protectively onto Celia, ensuring she saw nothing. That afternoon, Libone, passing by Celia, feigned to fall, attempting to tear Celia's clothing in the process. But the force of the pull worked both ways. Lon, on the other side, thwarted the suspicious woman's every move, including when Libone tried to pry into Celia's thoughts. The guardian was trapped in a frustrating loop. As long as the nine-tailed fox remained by Celia's side, she would never accomplish her goal. Meanwhile, Celia, dragging her injured body, returned home. Libone immediately approached, inquiring why Celia hadn't gone to Shura for healing. Celia explained that there were too many injured, and she didn't want to burden Shura with the extra work. She then questioned why such a battle had occurred without her. As a guardian, she should have been with them. Celia explained that today's suppression mission served as excellent training for the members. Only by becoming stronger could the guardians more securely protect the saint. But Libone understood. As the most resilient guardian, Celia was genuinely focused on protecting the saint, a shield for the empire. And just as Libone had said, Celia was the Empire's strongest shield. If she fell, the Empire would undoubtedly plunge into a grave crisis. These words left Celia pensive. Before the monster invasion, almost everyone had said the same thing to her. And as the battles intensified, people often thought of sacrificing themselves on the front lines, used by countless others, subjected to the monster's endless attacks. Even the saint had instilled in her the belief that only by enduring suffering could one become the most exceptional shield. And now, Only Celia truly understood the importance of caring for herself, protecting herself, the strongest shield. Despairing and ready to abandon everything, Celia still couldn't bear to leave her little wolf pup, Vio, and the nine-tailed fox, Lon. Not long ago, the injured Celia had returned triumphant, unwilling to burden the healer, Shura, with additional work. She ultimately collapsed before the other guardians. This played perfectly into Lei Bonet's hands. On the one hand, she could treat Celia, and on the other, she could confirm her suspicions. Libone strongly suggested that Celia remove her clothes. Just as the guardian prepared to assist, Celia used her last ounce of strength to stop her. She was unwilling to reveal her secret. She feared that, bearing a curse, she would no longer be fit to serve the saint. But setting aside Celia's status, Libone feared Celia's condition would worsen without immediate treatment. She pleaded with Celia, swearing that whatever she saw wouldn't matter. Between the fragmented words, Celia quickly lost consciousness and fell asleep. Libone seized the opportunity and removed Celia's armor. A malevolent aura emanating from Celia's shoulder enveloped the room. Instinctively, Libone drew out the holy water she carried and, empowered by magic, let a drop fall on Celia's shoulder. Celia's heart-wrenching cries of pain quickly echoed throughout the entire residence. Libone, while comforting her, worked diligently to maintain the treatment. Tonight was destined to be an extraordinary night. Celia remained unconscious for a long time. Libone stayed by her side. She captured the cursed energy in a vial, intending to study it back home and find a way to completely eradicate the affliction. But she still couldn't understand why these extensive burns and this malevolent aura were present on Celia's body. These words, laced with an accusatory tone, reached Lan's ears. Libone, noticing this, immediately explained to the nine-tailed fox that she wasn't questioning Celia's character, but rather expressing her deep concern for her well-being. She genuinely didn't want Celia to suffer like this again. Therefore, she was determined to investigate thoroughly. The next morning, Celia slowly opened her eyes. She found herself completely exposed. She immediately realized that the guardian must have discovered her secret. In the past, she hadn't even dared to visit the healing hall. Celia tried to recall what the guardian had said last, but couldn't remember a single word. Now, she felt utterly despairing. She began to imagine all the possible consequences. In her tormented vision, she ran endlessly, trying to escape, only to find herself trapped in a perpetual loop. She reflected on her blighted past, devoid of a loving family. She didn't even have a single close friend. If she abandoned everything, what would become of Vio, the little wolf boy? Meanwhile, Vio was following his sister's previous instructions. He brought a stool to reach a high shelf and retrieve medicine for Celia. This made Lon, the nine-tailed fox, feel somewhat helpless. Looking at Celia suffering in bed, Vio decided to live in his human form. This way, he could take care of his sister and alleviate some of her burdens. Lon also thought the little wolf boy had a good point. Celia's beast form was quite inconvenient. Even wiping Celia's brow was difficult. It seemed their future life together would be quite interesting. A new guardian had appeared. The injured and vulnerable woman was about to face judgment. How would the little wolf boy and the nine-tailed fox resolve this crisis? Not long ago, Celia had been injured on the front lines. The nine-tailed fox and the little wolf boy had cared for her all night. The next day, Lon heard a furious argument outside. He slowly opened his eyes. Shura, ignoring the Vice Captain Murtis's attempts to stop him, was determined to go to Celia's room. He hadn't seen his captain for 2 days and was frantic with worry, fearing something terrible had happened to her. And as he feared the moment he entered Celia's room, his suspicions were confirmed. He urgently called out his captain's name, but received no response. Instead, he was greeted by the nine-tailed fox. Lon, devoid of his usual arrogance, nuzzled against Celia's leg. The more Lon nuzzled, the more Shura's heart sank, until Vio, the little wolf boy, timidly appeared. Tears in his eyes, he pleaded with Shura to save his sister. After Shura further treated Celia, he launched into an unrelenting tirade. He berated Celia for pretending to be fine and was thankful she hadn't collapsed on the way back. Celia, mortified, didn't dare utter a word. Though his words were sharp and cutting, Celia recognized his concern. Realizing her mistake, Celia began to apologize profusely to Shura. Shura told her to save her apologies for the little ones. If it weren't for the beasts who had helped her take her medicine, she might already be dead. Seeing that Celia's face was free of its usual strain, Shura finally offered a satisfied smile. However, the next moment, Celia, pushing herself up, struggled to stand. Shura had dismissed everyone. With a glance at Huden's backside, and Celia's health only slightly improved, Shura insisted the captain stay in bed and rest. He wouldn't leave until she was fully asleep. The rest he entrusted to Lon, the nine-tailed fox, and Vio, the little wolf boy. Shura felt completely at ease, leaving them in charge. Celia wanted to express her heartfelt gratitude to Shura, but he mistook her intention, thinking she was about to argue with him. Seeing Shura's impatience, Celia obediently closed her eyes and whispered a quiet "thank you." Watching Celia drift off to sleep, Shura quietly left the room. The next day, Celia, her injuries healed, ran into Vice Captain Murtis on the road. He was carrying Shura's medicine, intending to deliver it to her. He reminded the captain to take her medicine promptly. He'd observed that she seemed to lack vitality. Medicine and rest were paramount, he stressed. Celia thanked the vice captain and took her leave. On her way home, Celia was spotted by a guardian. Several days had passed since the curse incident. As expected, she thought she would soon be arrested. Perhaps the moment she saw the guardian would be the moment her life ended. At that very instant, Murphy's Law seemed to magically activate. Le Bonnet's voice came from behind her. Celia turned to see not only the two guardians she already knew, but also a mysterious man with them. It seemed her life truly hung by a thread today. Unbeknownst to them, Lon, the nine-tailed fox, was watching everything unfold, ready to intervene on Celia's behalf at any moment. Unexpectedly, the new guardian seemed to get along remarkably well with Lon. It appeared everyone was charmed by the fierce yet adorable nine-tailed fox. A short while earlier, Libone had again sought out Celia, anxiously inquiring about her injuries. Murtis, standing behind him, teased him, suggesting he must be planning some strategy to be so solicitous. Libone immediately rounded on Murtis. "I advise you not to be so cold," he retorted. "Anyone would think we're here to arrest Celia." Hearing this, Celia breathed a small sigh of relief, but she remained extremely wary of the new guardian. Libone, however, took Celia's hand and reassured her, suggesting they return by carriage first. It seemed Libone was genuinely concerned for Celia. "What do you think, Herlosh?" he asked. The taciturn man didn't reply. As the fifth guardian, a man who hated humans, he had recently accepted Murtis's invitation. Herlosh had made it clear he was there to save animals. Celia had promised to build him a rescue center. If she deceived him, he would show no mercy to the saint or Murtis. And when Murtis met Herlosh, he sensed the sharp aura surrounding him, but Herlosh remained remarkably calm. It seemed the guardians all held a strange respect for Celia. Suddenly, however, Herlosh became agitated. It was because of Murtis's glittering eyes, which disturbed him. Murtis then laid down the law with Herlosh. No matter how much he disliked humans, he was not permitted to suddenly attack Celia. Herlosh quickly assured him that was impossible. His first impression of Celia had been very favorable. Then, faced with the arrival of a stranger, Lon, the nine-tailed fox, put on what he thought was a ferocious display. Herlosh, however, just laughed and scooped the little creature up in his arms. The two quickly began to play together. Just as the rumors suggested, the guardian Herlosh truly loved animals. Soon, Murtis got down to the real reason for his visit. The position of Holy Knight Commander was currently vacant, and since ancient times, the saint's personal knight commander is held by the first guardian. Julius's current whereabouts are unknown. According to Herlosh, the victor acts like a horse, which led to Julius's departure. Though his words were crude, they hit the mark. The purpose of this visit is to appoint you, Celia, as the temporary commander of the personal guard. Celia immediately refused. She was acutely aware of her own capabilities. She felt entirely inadequate for such a significant responsibility. But considering the Golem Girl incident that occurred a year ago on the outskirts of the Holy City, and the recent werewolf attack and subsequent subjugation campaign, Celia's presence here felt like a waste of her talents. Moreover, it's only a temporary position. Even the most disciplined knight order is but a scattered rabble without a leader. Celia didn't understand why she was chosen. Because you possess a kindred spirit's gift. You can sense spiritual beings from the aura of monsters. As an added bonus, We will arrange accommodations within the city for the nine-tailed fox, Lon, and the little wolf cub, Vio. Furthermore, Herlash will personally assist Lon in improving her combat abilities, guiding their healthy growth. Faced with this advantageous proposition, Celia, after much deliberation, agreed. This thrilled Libone beyond measure. He could finally spend every day with Celia. Their journey to the Holy Kingdom was about to begin. News of Celia's impending departure from the incident, likely a misspelling/transcription error, perhaps meaning a barge troop or similar group, and her appointment as commander of the Holy Kingdom's knights, quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys. The vice captain visited her early the next morning, his face full of bittersweet congratulations. He expressed his relief that the Holy Kingdom had finally recognized Celia's abilities. After a torrent of effusive praise, Celia found herself momentarily unsure if Murtis's excitement stemmed solely from her promotion. She had assumed everyone would be angry at her hasty decision, but seeing several grown men weeping outside her door, Celia finally felt a sliver of relief. Night fell quickly. Back home, Celia began packing. She clearly wasn't ready for the reality of becoming the Holy Kingdom's knight commander. Her anxiety was evident, a scene witnessed by the arriving Libone. He reassured her, saying she needn't worry. After all, the commander's position had been vacant for a long time, and the knights knew it needed to be filled quickly. They had even staged protests, declaring they wouldn't accept anyone but Julius as their commander. But now, circumstances had changed. Something is better than nothing, was their current thinking. Hearing this, Celia quickly asked if the victor had approved. Libone dismissed the question, saying there was no need to worry about that foolish man's decision. He was desperate for a temporary commander to protect him. All Celia needed to do was smile and feign obedience. Even if war broke out in the Holy Kingdom, the victor wouldn't let the knights leave his side. He was, in short, a complete coward. Celia was already developing a distaste for the victor, but for the sake of Lon and Vio's well-being, she had to accept the temporary command. Celia had one last question. Why had Libone been so kind to her after seeing the curse on her shoulder? Libone didn't believe it was a curse. While he sensed a malevolent aura, he didn't think it was entirely a curse. At his words, Celia was plunged into painful memories of her time at the orphanage. Anyone who dared to cross her would inevitably suffer a grave misfortune. Their eyes, filled with hatred and fear, haunted Celia, a memory she couldn't shake. She confessed her past to Libone, admitting her fear that even the Holy Kingdom's knights might be affected. Affected, for instance, by accidents like falling from their horses or contracting incurable diseases. Libone, however, seemed unconcerned. He was certain at that moment that only the priests who spread the rumors of Celia's curse and vehemently demanded her execution would suffer any harm. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from inside the house. It seemed Vio, the little wolf boy, had caused trouble again. Celia hurried to investigate. Only after she had completely left did Herlash jump down from the tree. Based on a conversation he just overheard, he could now tentatively confirm that the so-called wound on Celia's shoulder was something no sacred tree could heal, and the strange misfortunes befalling those around her mirrored the stigmata and divine laws associated with the saint. But if the prophecy was true, why hadn't the false saint been affected by divine law? He had, after all, usurped the true saint's position. The will of the gods was beyond their comprehension, just like how Libone could speak ill of the saint, and yet still stand there unharmed. It seemed the truth was about to be revealed. They eagerly anticipated Celia's performance within the Holy Kingdom. From the moment Libone first met Celia, he had taken a particular liking to her. He truly hoped she was the true saint. For the sake of Lon, the nine-tailed fox, and Vio, the little wolf boy, Celia willingly journeyed to the unknown Holy Kingdom to become the temporary commander of the Holy Knights. Meanwhile, a man was berating the Guardians, accusing them of bringing in a commander without their consent. It was an undeniable offense. In their minds, no one could replace Ulix's. If absolutely necessary, they themselves could step up and lead. But Murtis swiftly silenced him. While I admire your capabilities, he stated, they are far from sufficient to become the commander of the Holy Knights. Deflated, the man fell silent. Murtis immediately stepped forward to placate him, expressing his appreciation for the man's loyalty. But a nation cannot be without a ruler, an army without a leader, he continued. Moreover, Celia is only serving as a temporary commander. The man gradually relaxed his guard. For now, he could only accept Murtis's explanation. He had heard that Celia was a valiant and skilled knight, whose command and personal abilities were in no way inferior to Ulix's. He looked forward to meeting this woman, so highly recommended by the Guardians. Having dealt with this particular thorn in his side, Murtis turned his attention to Le Bonnet's performance. By now, the two had appeared before the Holy Knights. Celia was drenched in a cold sweat, though the man before her seemed amicable enough. Le Bonnet, however, appeared nonchalant, casually glancing around as if everything were proceeding according to plan. The long-awaited chef finally emerged. He knew exactly how to handle these men. The way to a man's heart was through his stomach, after all. It was difficult to refuse a request after accepting a meal. Tempted by the delicious food, the knight's stern expression softened. At Le Bonnet's signal, the knights began to feast, heartily consuming meat and drink. Seeing the opportune moment, Le Bonnet began to introduce the star of the show. He specifically added that Celia had admired Ulix's since childhood, stating that she would remain there with them, awaiting his return. The knights, upon hearing this, instantly dropped their solemn facade. They crowded around Celia, offering excited greetings. Le Bonnet, meanwhile, played the role of enthusiastic supporter. With their seamless teamwork, Celia finally earned a measure of acceptance from the knights. Cheers erupted, the names of Celia and Ulix's echoing through the air. Goblets were raised and drained in celebration, a release from the oppressive atmosphere they had long endured. Celia, too, began to feel a sense of belonging. She had thought she would never connect with anyone outside her former knightly order. She owed this to the wingman at her side, yet she still couldn't understand why, after seeing the curse that marred her shoulder, had he so readily recommended her for the position of commander of the Holy Knights. Night fell quickly. Celia, accompanied by Lon and Vio, arrived at their new quarters. The nine-tailed fox seemed uncomfortable wearing the fragrant collar. Celia gently scooped Lon into her arms, patiently explaining its importance. To spare Celia any unnecessary trouble, Lon obediently accepted it. Looking around the spacious, well-appointed villa, Celia couldn't help but wonder. The housing for the Holy Knights was surprisingly luxurious. It seemed the Holy One was quite different from what she had imagined. No wonder the Guardians and the Pope were working together to find new one. But rationality quickly reasserted itself. As a wife, she shouldn't entertain such thoughts. Obedience to the Holy One was her duty. Unbeknownst to her, the scales of fate had already begun to tip. To appease the vice-captain, Celia offered the most well-behaved nine-tailed fox and her beloved wolf cub. Not long before, Vio, growing rapidly, had expressed a desire to learn swordsmanship, asking Celia to take him to the training grounds so he could stay close to her. Celia had initially intended to refuse, arguing that the wolf cub was too young. But then she turned and saw that Vio had, without her noticing, grown into a young man over 6 feet tall. Seeing his sister's silence, Vio confidently declared he would disguise himself as a docile wolf, staying close by her side and only shifting to human form when absolutely necessary. This was a survival tactic the Guardians had instilled in him, the art of disguise. Worn down by Vio's persistent pleas, Celia finally agreed. The results, unexpectedly, were quite positive. Arriving at the training grounds, the pair quickly gained 2 admirers. The knights marveled at the new commander's ability to keep the 2 creatures contentedly basking in the sun. But there was one thing they couldn't understand: the perpetually indifferent expression on Commander Celia's face. But there was one thing they couldn't fathom: the new commander, Celia's perpetually indifferent expression, just as Celia considered approaching them. The vice-captain's sharp voice rang out from behind her. He demanded to know why the 2 weren't training. "Who gave you permission to slack off?" he barked, ordering them to run 100 laps as punishment. He then turned on Celia, scolding her for allowing her subordinates to idle about. "As commander, this is unacceptable," he declared. Just as he was about to continue his tirade, Vio stared blankly at the vice-captain, extending a paw as if to placate him. The vice-captain, surprisingly, seemed almost bashful, yet he didn't relent in his reprimand of Celia. Celia, however, didn't take offense at his bluntness. In fact, she found herself feeling a certain respect for him. She understood that his harsh words stemmed from a concern for the Holy Knight's reputation. In the eyes of many, the Holy Knights were indeed the strongest, but they also had a reputation for indulging in leisure and pleasure. He didn't want this negativity to ruin Ulysses' hard work, and the man hadn't come here to intimidate Celia. He announced that the victor summoned the new commander. Hearing this, Celia handed the docile Lon over to the man. She ordered him to look after the two little creatures until she returned safely. Then, alone, she headed towards the victor's abode. The oppressive atmosphere made Celia breathless. With the victor's permission, Celia entered smoothly. The man, the victor, was savoring grapes with an air of indulgence, his eyes appraising Celia's unfamiliar face. He displayed none of the heroic demeanor expected of the victor. He ordered Celia to sit. He offered her fruit, which she predictably refused. Facing Celia's exquisite beauty, the victor's thoughts took a lascivious turn. To better protect her master, the nine-tailed fox, Lon, unscrupulously absorbed human energy. This terrified the normally composed guardian, Herlosh, to the point of soiling himself. This fear stemmed from the recent invitation Celia had received from the victor. She was to visit the man's opulent temple. Looking at Celia's breathtaking face, the victor couldn't help but muse that a woman with such beauty could easily live off her looks. Why choose the arduous path of the sword? His flippant words made Celia seethe. But then the victor shifted gears. Returning to the matter at hand, he formally extended an olive branch. Meanwhile, the nine-tailed fox and the little wolf boy, Vio, slept soundly in their new quarters. A dark figure suddenly descended in the night. Herlosh, confident in his peerless agility, was instantly exposed before the two divine creatures. Vio, the little wolf, warily questioned Herlosh's purpose. The guardian didn't waste words. He told Vio to come outside with him alone, and he would understand. Lon, wanting to resolve his own curiosity, briefly bid Vio farewell. In moments, he followed Herlosh outside. Bathed in the pale moonlight, Lon looked vastly different from his docile daytime demeanor. He resembled a dangerous, predatory yokai. As far as Herlosh knew, nine-tailed foxes could never be tamed by humans. Yet, Lon obeyed Celia without question. This was likely why he remained so small. Subsisting on small animals wouldn't do. He needed to take the nine-tailed fox out for proper sustenance. Being closest to the animal world, Herlosh knew the quickest way to satisfy a beast's primal instincts. Hearing of a delectable treat, Lon trotted after Herlosh. He painted a vivid picture in his mind. If he didn't receive the promised feast, he would surely kill Herlosh tonight. They quickly stopped atop a building. Herlosh instructed the nine-tailed fox to use his sense of smell to detect the scent of humans in the air. Lon quickly complied, but he picked up strange, unpleasant odors, completely different from Celia's scent. Herlosh assured him this was correct. Good people like Lady Celia, possessing a kind and pure soul, had a pleasant aroma. If he absorbed her essence, the nine-tailed fox would become a full-fledged monster. But those who exuded a foul odor, like drunkards on the verge of collapse, were like durian, smelly, yet surprisingly delicious. And most importantly, they wouldn't corrupt him. This was precisely what he needed. This way, he could accelerate his cultivation and easily transform into a human form to protect Celia. It seems the unpleasant taste lingers longer than expected. The aftertaste of that encounter is still potent. Faced with such a handsome man, Herlosh, the guardian, felt his very soul being drawn away. Truly a captivating presence. Herlosh struggled to maintain his composure. The two reached an agreement. The man would regularly provide Lon, the nine-tailed fox, with his essence, in exchange for Celia's absolute safety. For the nine-tailed fox, it was a deal he couldn't refuse. He had long placed Celia above all else. Every night, she dreamt of a man resembling the nine-tailed fox. This time, he reached out a slender finger, seemingly intent on touching her. The audacity of it startled Celia, waking her in a cold sweat. Snapped back to reality, she immediately looked around, searching for the nine-tailed fox, suspicion clinging to her. But she only saw Vio, the wolf cub, looking proud. Shame washed over her for having such thoughts. Unbeknownst to her, it hadn't been a dream at all. Lon appeared before her, bold as brass. He even made her breakfast a McDonald's double cheeseburger. Just then, the perceptive nine-tailed fox sensed something. A powerful energy was approaching from outside. Lon told Celia to stay put while he investigated. Before a knock could even sound, the nine-tailed fox flung the door open. It was Libone, the guardian. Unlike his usual attire, he wore an elegant suit, but his tone remained as assertive as ever, ordering the man out of his way, lest he interrupt his time with Commander Celia. As the two faced off, Celia, already dressed, hurried downstairs. One pleased, the other not so much. The nine-tailed fox quickly asked if she had finished her breakfast. If she was full, he suggested she go and rest. Seeing this, Libone, defeated, rushed inside with the fruit he had brought. Celia stood frozen. Had she done something wrong? Why would Libone, a guardian, suddenly appear here? The nine-tailed fox, however, understood his intentions perfectly. He bluntly stated that Libone was likely jealous. Celia, however, suspected Libone might be there to monitor her. After all, the scar on her shoulder could easily invite ill will. They then began to sample the fine fruit Libone had brought. The nine-tailed fox picked up a strawberry and gently fed it to Celia. This made Libone roll his eyes. Looking at the man's arrogant and provocative expression, Libone had already killed him 10 times over in his mind, and the real show was just beginning. The man suddenly reverted to his nine-tailed fox form, collapsing heavily into Celia's arms. It seemed the essence he had consumed the previous day wasn't enough to sustain his human form. Libone laughed, relieved. The obstacle was finally gone. The two began discussing matters of the Holy Kingdom. Celia still hadn't mentioned the possibility of the victor being an imposter. Instead, she boasted to the Guardian about her recent accomplishments in battle. This made Libone serious. He cautioned Celia not to fear the victor. If she encountered danger, she should invoke Herlash's name. He was the only one capable of defeating the victor. With some reassurance, the next day, Celia went to the opulent temple. The victor was indulging in a glass of 82 law fight, listening with amusement as she spoke. She reported discovering a large amount of chaotic energy in the Forest of Dawn and requested he dispatch the holy knights to investigate. Unaware of the danger approaching, the long-haired man, who had previously intended to kill Celia, reappeared, silent as a shadow. This time, he chose not to strike directly. Instead, he began to watch them. Some time ago, Celia had discovered a surge of chaotic energy in the forest west of the city. She petitioned the victor to dispatch the Holy Knights, the order she currently commanded, to investigate. This, however, would leave the victor unprotected. The insecure man disregarded Celia's concerns. For him, it was a matter of pride. The entire city knew the Holy Knights were leaderless, reduced to a band of spoiled dandies who did nothing but feast and drink excessively. The Holy Knights were the victor's face, and Celia, as their temporary commander, was determined to uphold their reputation as well as the victor's. Looking at Celia's earnest expression, the false victor felt a flicker of motivation, a first taste of what it felt like to be protected. But his suspicion hadn't entirely dissipated. The woman snatched the red wine, claiming she only wanted to survive, to become a powerful holy knight, to fulfill her duty to protect the victor. She added that the guardian Herlash would accompany them on this mission. The false victor held a certain degree of fear for Herlash. After some deliberation, he found a way to save face and granted Celia's request to deploy the Holy Knights. Deputy Commander Delrin was ecstatic upon hearing the news. He couldn't believe the Holy Knights would one day be free from the victor's control, even if only for a moment. He suspected the woman and the false victor were plotting something. After all, not even their legendary former captain, Ulix's, had achieved such a feat. Celia simply told him not to worry, assuring him she was not under the false victor's control. The priority was training the knights, preparing them for the battles to come. Once the man had left, Celia finally breathed a sigh of relief. She understood Delrin's suspicion, which only strengthened her resolve to win this battle decisively, solidifying her position as temporary commander and dispelling the negative reputation surrounding the Holy Knights. She now had a close relationship with the Guardians and understood the nature of the marks on her body. Except for Libone, she wasn't sure what the other Guardians thought. Celia needed to prove to them that even bearing the curse, she wasn't a threat. Moreover, with the little wolf cub, Vio, and the nine-tailed fox, Lon, by her side, she had even more reason to live. These intense emotions caused the curse on her arm to flare up, and tears welled in her eyes. Seeing this, Lon immediately shifted to his true form to support his unsteady sister. Not wanting to worry them, Celia forced herself to leave alone. Unbeknownst to her, the man saw everything. It seemed it was time for him to act, to end Celia's life and leave her in a sunlit place. As anyone who's raised a nine-tailed fox knows, you should never provoke their master. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Not long ago, Celia had stood up to the victor, insisting on leading the holy knights in a battle. This was something even the previous commander, Ulix's, wouldn't have dared to do. The knights were a little overconfident. The deputy commander, fearing he would lose face in front of Celia, desperately explained that the knights were simply out of practice and therefore a bit boisterous. Fortunately, Celia understood and even organized a celebratory banquet for them. The deputy commander, even without his armor, still possessed a certain charm. A few drinks in, he began to open his heart to Celia. He expressed his sincere gratitude to her for allowing them to take up arms and fight again, instead of idling away their days beside the false victor, accomplishing nothing. Slowly losing their will to live, these men, who appeared to be mere drunkards, were once knights with distinguished victories. Their journey to this point had been arduous. They were determined to seize this opportunity to restore the holy knights to their former glory. Meanwhile, late at night, the false victor met with a mysterious silver-haired man. It turned out that the reason he held this position was entirely due to Lord Seymour. He commanded the man, no matter how repulsive it felt, to overcome all obstacles and remain there, becoming a saint. And, using this identity, he was to kill Celia in front of the numerous guardians. Before that, he must thoroughly investigate why she endured immense pain and persisted in living. Furthermore, Seymour also dangled an assistant before him, claiming that dealing with Celia and that suspicious fox by her side would be impossible without help. Elsewhere, the nine-tailed fox, Lon, and the wolf cub, Vio, anxiously awaited Celia's return. Innocent Vio had never tasted alcohol. He couldn't understand why Celia would drink such a thing, especially after vehemently opposing him drinking it before. If it was bad, why would Celia drink it? This tang, Sanzing-like chanting earned him a beating from the nine-tailed fox. This only confused the wolf cub further. He was completely lost. Lon explained patiently that whether alcohol was good or bad depended on the situation. But humans, after drinking, inevitably became foolish. They would let down their guard. They would even become completely defenseless, much like Vio when he transformed into a werewolf and struggled to control his instincts. But there was also an intense feeling of freedom. Late into the night, Celia returned home, reeking of alcohol and playfully teasing Lon. To maintain her image in front of the children, Celia decided to take a bath and sober up. But then, her nose began to bleed uncontrollably. Her consciousness began to fade. It was a bad omen. As expected, the mark on her shoulder was spreading. This had never happened before. Sensing the scent of blood, Lon knocked incessantly on the door. Not wanting to worry them, Celia lied, saying she would be out soon. Vio, pondering the smell of blood, wondered if Celia had started her period. While the two were distracted, Celia quickly lay down in bed. Vio found it strange that Celia hadn't patted his chest before sleeping, as she usually did. Lon immediately approached and discovered that the pearl he had placed within Celia was gone. That was 19 years of his essence. Could it have been absorbed by the evil mark on her shoulder? Someone must be behind this. Vio was furious. He swore to kill whoever was responsible. But anger alone was useless. Saving Celia was the priority. Lon decided to take a risky approach. He ordered Vio to protect Celia until he returned. To save the woman on the brink of death, the 1,000-year-old nine-tailed fox transformed into a human. He approached Celia's bedside. After briefly assessing her injuries, he instructed Vio to close the door. Then, he grasped Celia's chest and slowly moved his hand upwards. He stopped only when he touched the woman's pale lips. The aura of vulnerability radiating from Celia tempted Lon, the nine-tailed fox. He remembered the guardian's warning: never be seduced by Celia's scent. The kinder the human, the more delectable they are. A moment's carelessness could lead to a grave mistake, they had said. The nine-tailed fox fought his primal instincts, forcing himself to remain calm. Then, with his powerful body, he lunged forward. A mere sliver of space remained between them. He parted his lips, revealing sharp fangs, and from his mouth emerged a shimmering, almost translucent, blue orb. The orb floated directly toward Celia. Empowered by his magic, the blue orb transformed into a vibrant violet. This was the incredibly precious fox pearl, as vital to Lon as his own life. Yet, in this moment, it was the only way to restore Celia's consciousness. With Vio as witness, their lips met, an act shared only between lovers. Swiftly, the fox pearl passed into Celia's body. Lon, drenched in sweat, was instantly weakened. Having done all he could, the nine-tailed fox carefully tucked the blanket around her. He thought about Celia, about how she would soon be leaving for the siege battle. If she went in this condition, she might die on the battlefield. Lon and Vio resolved to follow her, no matter what. They couldn't simply sit idly by. 4 days later, at dawn, Celia awoke feeling refreshed. Before she could dwell on it, Lon and Vio, carrying all their belongings, stood solemnly before her. Celia, amused, teased them, asking where they thought they were going on a picnic. Learning that her 2 little shadows intended to accompany her, Celia was taken aback. She was even more surprised when Vio suddenly embraced her, clinging to her as if terrified of losing her. He even began to cry. Was he cursing her, certain she would die in battle? Unaware of what had transpired, Vio poured out everything that had happened. Only then did Celia understand that the energy within her came from Lan's fox pearl. She was deeply grateful for Lan's sacrifice, but it didn't change the fact that they couldn't accompany her to the siege. Given what Lon had done the previous night, he was weak and needed to recover at home. Vio should stay and protect Lon, not follow her, a seasoned commander. Celia wouldn't allow herself to be so selfish. As they reached an impasse, 2 guardians arrived unexpectedly. They had grave news for Celia. Someone had adopted a beautiful 9-tailed fox. Ever since, someone had been invading their dreams every night, determined to take their life. They hadn't expected Celia to have 2 bodyguards. This time, the man had come in person, sending 2 subordinates to attack Celia. The guardians had arrived just in time. They pushed open the door to check on Celia's injuries, but she panicked. She was terrified that her curse would be discovered. In truth, Mortis already knew. He had even investigated it. They had come to address the issue. Celia, still processing this, was suddenly grabbed by Leberny and unceremoniously tossed onto the sofa. He had witnessed firsthand the torment Celia endured from the curse. That day, he had secretly extracted the dark energy residing in her shoulder. The council commissioned Herlosi to take the sample to the magic tower for an investigation into the dark energy. Perhaps the magic tower had also discovered something. Intrigued by the material, the Guardians quickly received a response. They discovered the energy wasn't a curse at all, but chaos. Mages sometimes experience a surge of power if they overuse magic. This is a normal phenomenon, and the residue left behind in such instances is called chaos shards. They are similar to the chaotic entrances from which monsters are born, but they usually disappear quickly. However, the chaos on Celia's shoulder was parasitic. Few understood chaos, including the master of the magic tower. What was certain, however, was that wherever a chaos entrance existed in the world, monsters would inevitably be born. The one who undoubtedly understood chaos the best was the person behind Celia's affliction. The source of her lifelong torment wasn't her ancestry, after all. Then why such a painful childhood? She had lived in constant fear of her ancestry being discovered, terrified of being dragged to the stake. She had distanced herself from everyone, living a solitary life. It had all been orchestrated. Celia fought to maintain her composure, but her body trembled. She was on the verge of an emotional eruption. For mages who frequently experience power surges, chaos was a common occurrence. While there were similarities to monsters, when the chaos dissipated over time, they would become indistinguishable from ordinary people. So it wasn't considered a rare condition. Celia, now aware of the truth, didn't say much. Using the impending battle as an excuse, she politely asked them to leave. She needed time to process the years of inner conflict. Leberny refused to let her suffer alone. He embraced her tightly, vowing to stand by her side no matter what. Watching them leave, Celia felt a burning hatred for the person behind the chaos. Who would push her into such an abyss? Why were they so determined to kill her? Regardless of their motive, Celia would never forgive them. Her killing intent was practically radiating off her. With the woman about to head off to battle, the two little ones at home were worried sick. After 3 days of Vio's incessant fretting from his perch on the windowsill, Lon finally snapped. He roared at him to shut up. There was nothing more they could do here at Celia's home. Perhaps they could find a breakthrough with her subordinates. After some discussion, they decided to head to the training grounds that afternoon. Meanwhile, everyone was preparing for the upcoming battle. They had received Celia's sudden notification and had been drilling since dawn. It seemed their commander was furious, so they had abandoned their usual laziness. No one knew what had happened to her. But compared to their previous commander, this temporary leader's anger was chillingly indifferent. 2 unexpected guests arrived at the training grounds. In the eyes of the soldiers, Vio and Lon were just a goofy wolf dog and a cute 9-tailed fox. They were greeted with enthusiastic, if rough, hugs. The soldiers were blissfully unaware of how fearsome these creatures could be. These fools didn't seem very bright. They didn't seem like the type who could persuade Celia. Coupled with the difficulty of communicating with animal forms, the plan was a bust. It seemed their only hope now was Shura. Vio, using his keen sense of smell, locked onto Shura's scent. The man beside him remained completely oblivious. Vio was now in full hunting mode. Lon, communicating telepathically, tried desperately to calm him down, urging him to maintain his composure. The vice commander was currently inside, talking with Celia. He suggested they should head to the battlefield immediately. Otherwise, if the person behind all this managed to evade them, everything would become much more difficult. Meanwhile, outside, Vio was barely holding it together. He could sense Shura's presence nearby, and an unprecedented surge of energy coursed through him. He yearned to rush to her immediately. Shura, however, merely glanced in their direction from afar and noticed the dissipating magic. She immediately ordered her squad to release Vio and then proceeded alone to Celia's room. Shura's visit was at the behest of Mortis. He was worried about Celia going to the battlefield in her current condition, and also about leaving 2 dangerous beings behind. After all, they had almost caused a riot outside just moments ago. No matter how you looked at it, the 2 were still monstrous Oni. Killing was in their very nature. If they were left in the city, and something happened, everything would be lost. If she hadn't intervened, they would have killed a member of her squad. Celia, upon learning of this, was perplexed. Finally, under Shura's persistent persuasion, Celia reluctantly agreed to take Lon and Vio with her. It seemed she hadn't thought things through. Shura then advised Celia that in the future, if she had any concerns, she should remember to discuss them with her. After all, they were close, inseparable friends. Even the squad members and Mortis thought so. Then, Shura ordered Celia to remove her clothes, stating she needed to perform a full examination. The 2, having gotten their way, finally revealed long-awaited smiles. No matter what, their goal had been achieved. However, there was something about Shura that seemed off. The new guardian, the usually aloof Herlosi, appeared incredibly shy. After Shura's examination, Celia led her squad to begin their final preparations for the siege. Victor suddenly appeared, much to the vice commander's surprise. The man who had previously shown no interest in the Paladin Order was now so concerned about this battle. Something felt amiss. Victor claimed to be worried about the Order, and so he had assigned a highly skilled apothecary to assist them, Muya, the right-hand man of the white-haired Seymour. But none of them knew his true identity. This put the pressure on Shura. 2 master apothecaries were bound to clash. Celia considered refusing, but Victor leaned in close and whispered that it was an order, and for Celia's own good, she shouldn't disobey. Soon, they were on their way. Celia, using the chaos map provided by Mortis, successfully reached their designated location. The overwhelming sense of killing intent that emanated from ahead prompted Celia to make a last-minute decision to set up camp. The official assault would begin tomorrow. The squad members were brimming with confidence, determined to return with a significant victory. They showed no signs of nervousness. This allowed Celia to breathe a sigh of relief, a comforting smile gracing her lips. Night fell quickly. two unexpected visitors arrived at the camp, Herlosi and the new guardian, Yobia. Celia immediately bowed to them. Yobia quickly waved her hand, dismissing the formality. The initial meeting was strained. Herlosi, blushing, reminded the two to sit down before they continued. This left the nine-tailed fox and its companion bewildered. Using telepathy, they whispered amongst themselves about Herlosi. That insufferable fellow, they muttered. Imagine masquerading as a human and engaging in courtship, but being creatures of magic themselves. Herlosi overheard their telepathic exchange. He angrily telepathically retorted, "Silence," ensuring that Celia and Yobia remained oblivious to the bickering. Herlosi, choosing to rise above the petty squabble, let the matter drop. Once everyone was seated, Yobia took the lead and introduced herself. As the guardian of the evolution staff, she possessed the ability to close the chaos gateway. She explained that she had come to assist Celia in the upcoming siege, but more importantly, to examine the chaos residing on Celia's shoulder. Celia immediately removed her clothing, revealing the long-concealed chaos. Yobia observed it carefully. Chaos of this magnitude, she stated gravely, would inflict severe damage should you attempt to force its evolution. The chaos has already become one with you. Furthermore, it feeds on life essence, she continued. It will consume your life force, attacking your very heart until death. From this point forward, Celia, you are bound to this chaos. The prospect of this eternal bond filled Celia with despair. Yobia, the guardian, shared Celia's sorrow. But Celia quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. She then turned to Herlosi, expressing her gratitude for his thoughtfulness in bringing Yobia to her aid. Observing the man's blush, the two magical creatures couldn't contain their whispered mockery.